Well, for more on this, I'm joined by David Nutt, who's Professor of Neuropsychopharmacology at Imperial College in London, and he chaired the UK's Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs, but left after criticising government policy. He joins us from Brussels. Very good to see you, Professor Nutt. I mean, the logic behind this new law, as it's explained by the government, is essentially it could prevent dozens of deaths, it could prevent people getting very seriously ill. We've had a 33-year-old man put in an induced coma because of taking a legal high this week. So what do you make of that argument?
Well, I think it might save a few deaths. The government's own data suggests it might save 10 deaths a year, which is kind of a rather small number in comparison with the 25,000 deaths a year from alcohol and the 80,000 deaths from tobacco. And also, it's a very draconian piece of legislation. In fact, it's the most bizarre piece of legislation for centuries. Because rather than banning the dangerous drugs, which are the synthetic cannabinoids, and now those are the drugs we're all talking about, it's banning everything. It's banning safe drugs like nitrous oxide, which in fact a lot of people use because they don't want to use the dangerous drug called alcohol. So the perverse consequences of this could be enormous. And we know in Ireland, where the ban was brought in 6 years ago, virtually no prosecutions, head shops closed down, sales in the back street, deaths go up. So it'll probably cause more deaths than it saves.
In terms of alcohol, I mean, I think we all accept there is an alcohol problem in this country. There's a problem with other legal drugs that we've tolerated, booze, basically. But that doesn't mean to say a government shouldn't attempt to address a problem like this, which clearly is a problem for some people, for some drugs, and they don't really know what they're buying.
Well, address it in a rational fashion. You don't have to ban everything. I'm sitting here, I've just been chairing the European Brain Council all day today. Over lunch, I shared with my friends from France and Germany the fact that Britain was banning every single psychoactive substance, now and forevermore, any substances which could be invented tomorrow, on the assumption that they're going to be harmful. And they say that's ridiculous. Suppose someone invented tomorrow a safer form of tobacco. Would that be illegal? And of course it would. So we are actually shooting ourselves in the foot because we are not allowing British science to develop safe alternatives to recreational drugs, which we know are the big killers.
Would it be able, with your expertise, to draw up a list then of ones which are reasonably safe in your opinion? Because, as you heard that lady say in our report, when something is legal, we assume it's safe, otherwise it wouldn't be legal. So that's perhaps why so many people get into trouble with taking some of these drugs. Let's
be clear about this. Most of those 100 deaths that are claimed to be due to legal highs were not legal highs. Probably only about 5 of them were still legal. And that shows the problem with this argument. Most of the drugs people are taking are illegal today. The police could stop them being sold, but they choose not to because it's difficult. They just think this blanket ban will make their life easier. But of course we could come up with a set of compounds which are kind of weak stimulants, a bit like caffeine, which are safe versions of cannabis, i.e. cannabis itself, which could be made available legally. And that would stop people using these so-called legal highs, which are potentially more dangerous. But because we've had prohibition on the safe drugs, people have turned to these more dangerous drugs in an attempt to avoid getting criminal prosecutions. It's a kind of rational response to the insane prohibition we've had on drugs like cannabis and ecstasy for the last 30 years.
And just to sort of wrap up where you think that the government, perhaps the press in a way, is coming from on this, do you think we're in some kind of moral panic then? Using the word prohibition sounds like America in the 20s.
Of course we're in a moral panic. Why? To ban nitrous oxide simply because a couple of footballers inhale the odd bag is absurd. Nitrous oxide hasn't really killed anyone in 200 years. And we're banning it simply because we do not like young people using it. In fact, most of this ban is an attack on the young culture, and it's an attack driven by some aspects of the media who just do not like young people doing something that they didn't do, and it's an excuse to attack young people and to try to stop them having fun. And I think it's irresponsible the way the government is taking this forward. There are much more sensible ways they could have a proportionate approach, and this is completely disproportionate.